Nobody, not even the most passionate fans of music or fashion, could have predicted that a single blind date would ignite a love story so powerful it would outlive the man himself. A supermodel whose elegance felt almost unreal, a rock legend whose genius reshaped the world, and a daughter hidden from the spotlight for 22 years, now emerging as the breathtaking fusion of two extraordinary destinies. Before the world sees her transformation, one that will genuinely make you gasp, we need to go back to the very beginning, back to Somalia, to London, to New York, to the places where two lives were being shaped long before they ever found each other. Because to understand the magic of their daughter, you must first understand the fire, the resilience, and the love story that created her. Long before the world knew her as the regal supermodel who captivated fashion's greatest icons, she was Zara Mohammed Abdul Majid, a young girl born in Mogadishu, Somalia. Her childhood was shaped by tradition, dignity, and the deep wisdom of her grandfather, the man who gave her the name Iman, meaning faith. He believed the name would carry her toward a strength and greatness. He was right. Iman was born into a remarkable family. Her father served as Somalia's ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Disciplined, diplomatic, principled, her mother was a gynecologist, compassionate, meticulous, and respected. And in a lineage of 6 generations filled only with sons, Iman became the first girl born in her family in over a century. Her arrival wasn't just celebrated, it was cherished. But her childhood was anything but ordinary. She spent her earliest years living with her grandparents, absorbing the stories, values, and a sense of resilience. Then, at age of 4, her life shifted dramatically. She was sent to a boarding school in Egypt, where she spent most of her youth far from home. Political unrest eventually pushed the family back to Mogadishu, only for them to uproot again, this time to Kenya, searching for safety and stability. By the time she entered the University of Nairobi, Iman seemed destined for an academic or diplomatic path. Political science was her focus, and she moved through life with calm determination. But destiny, as it often does, had a different plan. During university, she crossed paths with American photographer Peter Beard, whose artistic eye immediately recognized something the world had yet to see. Her elegant posture, impossibly long neck, and radiant copper-toned skin stunned him. He urged her to try modeling, to step into a world she never imagined. What began as a chance encounter soon redefined her entire future. Within just 1 year of moving to the United States, she appeared in Vogue, 1976, her first major assignment. And from there, her ascent was unstoppable. Designers like Gianni Versace, Calvin Klein, Halston, and Donna Karan adored her. Yves Saint Laurent went even further, calling her his dream woman. It wasn't just beauty, it was presence, a grace that felt almost royal. Iman wasn't just a model, she was a phenomenon, a woman who shifted the standards of beauty forever. While Iman was rising like a comet in the world of fashion, another star, far brighter, far more unpredictable, was rewriting the rules of music itself. David Robert Jones, born January 8, 1947 in London, would one day be known to the world simply as David Bowie, a name that carried electricity, rebellion, and unmatched creativity. But before fame, Bowie was just a young man obsessed with art, music, and design, searching for a voice powerful enough to escape the ordinary. His early career was frustratingly quiet, years of experimenting, performing, reinventing himself, yet no breakthrough. until 1969. That year, the world heard something unlike anything before, Space Oddity, a haunting, otherworldly track that introduced not just a musician, but a visionary. Bowie had arrived, and he didn't stop. In 1972, he shocked the world again, transforming into Ziggy Stardust, a magnetic androgynous alien rock persona that shattered all norms. He made gender, identity, and performance art collide into something mesmerizing. Ziggy wasn't just a character, it was a revolution. Through the 1970s, Bowie kept evolving at a pace no one could predict. Soul, electronic, experimental, albums like Young Americans, Station to Station, and the legendary Berlin trilogy, Low Heroes, Lodger, showed a mind constantly reinventing itself. By the 1980s, Bowie was no longer just a star. He was a cultural force, selling over 100 million records, winning Grammys, captivating film audiences as the Goblin King in Labyrinth, and being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Even after his death in 2016, his influence refuses to fade. In 2022, he became the best-selling vinyl artist of the 21st century, proving that legends don't die, they echo. Yet behind the fame, behind the personas and costumes and the stadium lights, Bowie carried something unexpected: loneliness. Despite global admiration, he longed for someone who could see beyond the legend, someone who could love the man, not the superstar. He had no idea that the one person who could fill that emptiness was about to walk into his life. By the late 1980s, David Bowie stood at the peak of global fame, adored, idolized, untouchable. Yet behind every dazzling performance, behind every magazine cover, there was a man quietly longing for something real. His close friend and hairstylist, Teddy Antolin, noticed that emptiness. David was very lonely, Teddy later recalled. All this fame, all this hard work, and then he was alone. Wanting to help, Teddy made a bold decision. He would play matchmaker. He arranged a dinner party in Los Angeles, casual, friendly, harmless. But what Bowie didn't know was that his entire life was about to change in one evening. It took convincing, since Bowie was living in New York at the time while Iman was based in LA. But Teddy insisted. Something told him this night mattered, and he was right. Bowie arrived first, rolling up in a white Mustang, dressed from head to toe in a crisp white denim. Minutes later, the door opened, and Iman stepped inside. Tall, radiant, confident, wrapped in sleek black leather that contrasted Bowie's bright silhouette. The moment their eyes met, the atmosphere shifted, almost like the room itself took a breath. It was electric, Teddy said, and everyone who witnessed that moment agreed. Bowie was mesmerized. Iman was intrigued but careful. Yet the conversation flowed effortlessly. Laughter, warmth, a strange familiarity between two people who had lived wildly different lives. For Bowie, it was love at first sight. For Iman, it took time. She later laughed about it in a 2021 People interview. David said, "It was love at first sight. It took me a few months, but I got there." But even in those early hours together, something powerful had begun, a spark impossible to ignore, a connection destined to transform both their lives. After their very first meeting, Iman flew to Paris for a fashion show. For most people, distance might have cooled the spark, but not for David Bowie. If that night had been nothing more than a fleeting moment, he would have let it fade. But he couldn't. Not with Iman. From New York, he began courting her, not with grand gestures, but with the kind of sincerity that reveals a man's true heart. While Iman was in Paris, bouquets of fresh flowers began arriving regularly at her hotel room. No dramatic notes, no showmanship, just quiet reminders that someone, somewhere, was thinking about her with genuine affection. And when she returned to the United States, Bowie did something that touched her deeply. He was waiting for her at the airport. No entourage, no spotlight. Just a man who couldn't wait another minute to see her again. He properly wooed me, Iman later recalled, warm, patient, thoughtful, qualities she had never expected from a rock legend whose life appeared larger than life. Slowly, gently, her guard began to fall. As for Bowie, he had known from the very beginning. She would be my wife, he confessed years later. In my head, it was a done deal. I'd never gone after anything in my life with such passion. I just knew she was the one. Those were not the words of a global superstar chasing a beautiful woman. They were the word of a man who had found the love of his life and would do anything to win her heart. As their relationship grew, it deepened with a sense of clarity neither of them had expected. Bowie, who had spent years living behind personas and stage lights, suddenly found himself wanting something profoundly real. And so, he did what felt natural to a man completely certain. He proposed, but Iman didn't say yes, not at first. When her friend Teddy asked if she had accepted, she laughed and replied, "He's asked." I said no. It wasn't rejection, it was respect. For her culture, for her family, for the seriousness of marriage itself. Iman needed Bowie to understand that loving her meant embracing everything that shaped her roots, her traditions, her world. And Bowie, ever the gentleman, didn't push. He listened, he learned, he waited. Then came the moment that changed everything. During a romantic trip, Bowie invited her onto his yacht drifting along the Bosphorus Strait, the water glowing beneath them, the air filled with a quiet sense of destiny. And there, surrounded by the stillness and beauty, he proposed again. This time, Iman said yes. Bowie didn't just give her a ring, he gave her a symbol, a 15-carat star sapphire, a rare gem he had searched for himself, believing its luminous depth reflected the woman he loved. Later, they selected a second ring together, a 14-carat yellow canary diamond, chosen not for extravagance, but for meaning, a shared appreciation of beauty, art, and intention. Their engagement wasn't just a promise, it was a masterpiece of patience, devotion, and mutual understanding, a union formed not in haste, but in harmony. It was the beginning of a love story destined to become one of the most extraordinary in music and fashion history. On April 24, 1992, David Bowie and Iman quietly exchanged vows at the Lausanne City Hall in Switzerland. No flashing cameras, no roaring headlines, just two souls choosing each other with a calm, intimate certainty. But the world would soon witness a celebration worthy of their extraordinary love. Weeks later, on June 6th, they held a second wedding in a breathtaking Tuscan villa in Italy, a ceremony filled with sunlight, music, and an unmistakable magic in the air. The guest list glittered with icons like Yoko Ono and Valentino, but even among legends, the most unforgettable sight was Bowie himself. He had never looked happier. Teddy Antolin, the friend who brought them together, said the wedding felt nothing short of magical. Bowie glowed, not with his usual stage charisma, but with a softer radiance, a joy that came from finally finding his home in another person. And in true Bowie fashion, he created the entire playlist for the night. a mix of lively dance tracks, a few of his own songs, and an energy that made it feel less like a celebrity wedding and more like a celebration of pure, unfiltered love. The world saw a rock legend. Iman saw the man she loved, laughing, dancing, holding her hand like he never intended to let go. Their wedding wasn't just an event. It was a transformation. The moment David Bowie stepped into the next, more grounded chapter of his life. Marriage did something to David Bowie that fame, success, and reinvention never could. It changed him profoundly, quietly, beautifully. Friends who had known him through decades of chaos, touring, and artistic experimentation began to notice a new energy around him. He seemed calmer, healthier, more centered. It was as if the turbulence of his past had finally settled, and the reason was unmistakable. Iman. I had to step up to impress her, Bowie once said. It wasn't a joke. It was a confession. Her presence, her strength, her serenity pushed him toward a better version of himself. He quit drinking. He embraced a more peaceful lifestyle. He prioritized home over nightlife, presence over performance. For more than 20 years, their marriage flourished on mutual respect, shared values, and an emotional intimacy neither had fully experienced before. Both had known heartbreak. Both had known the weight of fame. But this time, love felt different. It wasn't wild, it wasn't chaotic, it was stable, intentional, and deeply comforting. In a 2021 interview with the New York Times, Iman reflected, "We knew what we wanted from each other. I know my identity, and David knew his." That clarity, rare in Hollywood, even rarer in music, became the anchor of their life together. They understood each other beyond the spotlight, beyond the personas, beyond the noise of the world. For while the world loved David Bowie, Iman loved David Jones, the man behind the legend. Even long after his passing, she refused to call him her late husband. To her, he remains simply my husband. Their love didn't fade with time, it deepened, even beyond death. From the very beginning, the connection between David Bowie and Iman wasn't just visible, it was magnetic. Bowie felt it instantly. My attraction to her was immediate and all-encompassing. I couldn't sleep from the excitement of our first date. He told Hello magazine. He often described her as intolerably sexy, a phrase only Bowie could craft, powerful, poetic, and utterly sincere. But this wasn't the shallow fascination of a rock star drawn to beauty. This was something deeper, a pull neither of them could fully explain. Iman felt it too. David was beyond handsome. He oozed charisma, she told People magazine. But like Bowie, her attraction went beyond looks. What she found in him was kindness, warmth, and an emotional steadiness that contrasted sharply with his wild, larger-than-life image. Their chemistry was effortless. Their laughter was real. Their understanding of each other seemed to form in seconds rather than years. Bowie found peace in her presence. Iman found safety in his arms. Together, they created a bond built not on glamour, but on trust, joy, and a rare emotional balance. In a world obsessed with extremes, their love was gentle. In an industry built on illusions, their love was real. And soon they would protect that reality at all costs. When David Bowie and Iman decided to build a life together, they chose New York City. Not for the glamour, not for the spotlight, but for privacy. A place where they could exist as David and Iman, not as global icons. By then, Bowie had long stepped away from the excesses of rock stardom. The parties didn't matter anymore, the personas didn't matter anymore. Family did. David is even more of a homebody than I am, Iman told The Guardian. At least I go to parties once in a while. Behind closed doors, they protected their private world fiercely. Their home wasn't just a place, it was a sanctuary. I fell in love with David Jones, Iman once said softly. I did not fall in love with David Bowie. Bowie is a persona. David Jones is the man I met and fell in love with. And that man found his greatest happiness in the simplest moments. Quiet mornings, shared meals, music drifting through the living room, laughter echoing down the hallway. In 2000, their joy grew even deeper with the arrival of their daughter, Alexandria Lexi Zara Jones, the child Bowie had waited years to welcome into his life. Their home became even more sacred, more protected, more full of love. It was a life the cameras never saw, a life they intended to keep just for themselves. But time, as it always does, would test the strength of that sanctuary in ways no one could prepare for. On January 10th, 2016, the world lost a legend. But Iman, she lost her soulmate. To fans, David Bowie's passing was shocking. To Iman, it was a fracture so deep she could barely speak of it. People would often tell her, "You're so strong." But she answered quietly, "I'm not strong. I'm just trying to keep it together." In the years that followed, she focused on raising their daughter, Lexi, helping her navigate grief while silently carrying her own. Their home in upstate New York became a cocoon of memories, each room holding echoes of his presence. It wasn't until the pandemic that I finally began to process the loss, she admitted. And then she said the words that stunned the world. "He's not my late husband. He's my husband." To her, Bowie never left. She still feels him in the small things, a song, a scent, the warmth of sunlight across the floor. Sometimes a bluebird appears near her home, the same bluebird Bowie sang about in Lazarus, and she believes in her heart that he's there, hiding in plain sight. Even when asked if she would ever remarry, her answer remained unwavering. No. When Lexi herself asked the same question, Iman simply smiled and replied, "I still feel married." In 2021, she told Harper's Bazaar, "David is in our hearts and minds every day." Her love never ended. It simply changed form, becoming something eternal, something unbreakable. Their story didn't stop with his final breath. It continues in the woman who still speaks his name with tenderness, and in the daughter who carries his spirit forward. David Bowie may have rewritten the history of music and style, but to him, one of life's greatest achievements was something far simpler, far more tender, becoming a father again. On August 15th, 2000, he and Iman welcomed their daughter, Alexandria Lexi Zara Jones, a moment Bowie described as a long and patient wait finally fulfilled. Both he and Iman wanted the timing to be perfect, the circumstances calm, the home full of love. Far from the spotlight, that is exactly the life they created for Lexi. While the world chased Bowie's every move, Lexi grew up quietly, protected, and deeply cherished. Iman, who knew the weight of fame all too well, made a firm choice. Lexi would have a childhood untouched by cameras. "We were very normal," Iman often said. She loved remembering the way Bowie would play music with Lexi at home. Soft melodies, laughter, tiny hands on piano keys. These were the moments he valued most. Not the stage, not the crowds, but fatherhood. As Lexi approached adulthood, glimpses of her emerged. On her 18th birthday, Iman shared a few photos. Elegant, artistic, striking. Offers from modeling agencies flooded in immediately, but Lexi said no. "This can all wait," Iman told her. Have a private life while you can. Lexi listened with grace, maturity, and wisdom far beyond her years. Instead of fame, she chose art. Her paintings, occasionally shared online, are bold and emotional. Swirling colors, dreamlike figures, and abstract expressions that hint at a deep creative soul. She describes her art as a form of meditation, a quiet place where she can exist freely without comparison, without pressure. In her own way, Lexi honors both her parents' legacies, her mother's poise, her father's artistic spirit, her own voice, gentle, private, unmistakably hers. But Lexi is not Bowie's only child. And to understand the full picture of their family, we must look briefly at his first child, a son who carved his own path entirely outside the shadows of fame. Long before Lexi was born, David Bowie had already experienced fatherhood. In 1971, he welcomed his first child, Duncan Zoe Haywood Jones, with his first wife, Angie Bowie. As a boy, he was known to the world as Zoe Bowie, a name that followed him everywhere, even when he didn't want it. As he grew older, he quietly stepped away from the spotlight, choosing to use his given name, Duncan Jones, and living a life shaped by discipline, intellect, and independence rather than fame. Duncan's education was rigorous. He attended a prestigious boarding school in Scotland and later studied philosophy in Ohio, a path far removed from the chaotic glamour of rock stardom. But his true passion lay in film. He enrolled at the London International Film School, graduating in 2001. Bowie, though supportive, never pressured him. He always let Duncan find his own rhythm, his own identity. That patience paid off. In 2009, Duncan released his first feature film, Moon, a haunting, intimate science fiction story that earned widespread acclaim and won him a BAFTA award. Duncan later joked, "He'd been waiting for me to get off my ass and do something with my life." Bowie was deeply proud, though he waited to watch the film only after it was completely finished, wanting Duncan's work to stand on its own. Duncan continued his career with A Source Code, 2011, and later Warcraft, 2016, building a reputation as a thoughtful, ambitious director in the sci-fi and fantasy world. Outside of filmmaking, Duncan built his own family with photographer Rodney Ronquillo, whom he married in 2012 shortly after her cancer diagnosis. She recovered, and together they welcomed 2 children. Stanton David Jones, born just 6 months after Bowie's passing. Zoe Tala M. Jones, born in 2018, a continuation of Bowie's name, a continuation of his legacy, but in an entirely new branch of creativity. Duncan didn't follow in his father's footsteps. He walked confidently beside them, in his own direction. Soon, Bowie's children, Lexi and Duncan, would each honor him in their own deeply personal way. For David Bowie's youngest daughter, Lexi Jones, her father's presence never faded, not even after his final day. On the 2nd anniversary of his passing in 2018, she honored him in a way that was both intimate and poetic. A tattoo of a crescent moon and the words Daddy X, along with his birth and death years, a quiet mark of love, etched permanently onto her skin. In 2023, she shared a childhood video of herself playing keyboard beside him, tiny fingers pressing keys as Bowie sat close, smiling, encouraging. She captioned it simply, "7 years ago today, I miss you." Sometimes grief doesn't need many words. Sometimes love speaks loudest in silence. But Lexi's connection to her father isn't limited to memories. She inherited something unmistakable, his creative soul. In 2021, she posted a short clip of herself singing an original song. Her voice was soft, vulnerable, trembling with emotion. She admitted she was nervous to share it, a glimpse into just how personal her creativity is. It was raw. It was real. It was Bowie, carried forward in her own gentle way. And then there is Duncan, who keeps his father's essence alive through storytelling, through film, through carefully crafted worlds filled with depth, emotion, and imagination, the very qualities Bowie embodied. But where their father's legacy shines most clearly is not on stage, not on screens, not in museums or vinyl collections. It lives in the love he left behind. And no one carries that love more faithfully than Iman. Since Bowie's passing in 2016, Iman has carried his memory with a grace that feels almost sacred. People often try to label her grief, to place it into tidy phrases like moving on or letting go. But Iman rejects all of it because her love was never meant to fit inside those words. When someone refers to Bowie as her late husband, she gently corrects them. He's my husband, not was, is. She still wears the necklace engraved with his name, a gift she has never taken off. She still feels him in the quiet moments, in the colors of a sunset, in the whisper of a familiar melody, in the presence of a bluebird perched nearby. The memories, once sharp with pain, have softened into gratitude. The memories, she said, are now of how great it was. There was no longing for replacement, no searching for new endings. Iman's love didn't die, it transformed. It became timeless. Their daughter, Lexi, carries Bowie's creativity forward. Duncan carries his discipline and imagination, and Iman carries his heart. Together, they form a legacy that is not written in records sold, films made, or awards earned, but in the quieter, more powerful spaces of love and remembrance. Some love stories burn bright and fade, some spark briefly and disappear, but once in a generation, a love story appears that survives everything, even death. David Bowie and Iman lived such a story. And today, after 22 years, when the world sees their daughter, the grace in her posture, the fire in her creativity, the gentleness in her eyes, we see not just the child of two legends, we see the living proof that their love endures forever.